Next, we've got some closeout memos. Gary?
Mr. Chairman, 2 closeout memos. As you see, Claremont test well, level 2 study, and Keith Clary will present that. Second one is a South Platte, and we'll get to that in a minute. Go ahead, Keith.
Mr. Chairman, good morning, Commission. This is the Claremont test well study closeout memo for a level 2 study. This project was initially part of the 2015 session with an appropriation of $750,000. The contract was with Weston Engineering Incorporated, and the original contract amount was $597,400. The final contract amount was $557,447.37. The contract savings amount was $39,952.63. That also includes a $30,000 amendment number 1 that was executed on 2016 in November. This project basically was for the town of Claremont. They've got 2 existing wells, and the wells are in the Wasatch Fort Union formation. And these wells produce a moderate quality water. And one of the wells, number 2, only produces about 5 gallons a minute. So if their number 1 well goes down, they would have insufficient water supply to supply the town. So that was the purpose of this study, was to go as a level 2 feasibility study to look into that. So as part of this level 2 feasibility study, a deep test well, Claremont well number 3, was sited, designed, and constructed to a depth of 1,626 feet into the Tongue River member of the Fort Union Formation in April 2016. The well is recommended to yield 100 gallons a minute with moderate water quality, which is a little poorer quality than the 2 existing wells for the town. Because of the less than desirable water quality in the deep test well, a second shallow test well named the Claremont Alluvial Well was also constructed in the alluvial aquifer to a depth of 70 feet in 2017. This second test well yielded 15 gallons a minute, but the water quality was very poor, with a total dissolved solids of 7,620 milligrams per liter parts per million. This alluvial water is considered as non-potable. During the level 2 study, 6 water supply alternatives were identified for the town of Claremont. Number 1 was do nothing. Number 2 was connect the Claremont well. Number 3, the deep test well. Number 3 was to utilize a groundwater treatment system. Number 4 was to initiate water treatment at point of use. Number 5 was construct a surface water treatment plant. Number 6 was create a town-wide raw water irrigation system. Conceptual designs and cost estimates were prepared for the alternatives. In August 2018, the town of Claremont selected alternative number 2, connect the Claremont well number 3, the deep test well. A public hearing was held on June 26th at the town hall in the town of Claremont. The final report and executive summary are available on the website listed. On August 21st, 2018, the town of Claremont applied for a 2019 WWDC Level 3 construction funding for the WWDC eligible components of this project to purchase the Claremont well number 3 and connect the well to their water system for additional supply. The total estimated project cost for alternative number 2 is approximately $731,915. The WWDO is currently preparing a recommendation for this 2019 Level 3 project. And the motion is listed below for the commission, and I'll take any questions if you guys have any.
So the well that we drilled down to 1,600 and some feet that yielded 100 gallons a minute is going to be connected to their existing one. And what does that do to the water quality? I mean, for the money we spent.
Nick, we need you to pull your microphone to thank you.
For the money we spent, how successful were we with this test well thing?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bettis, the test well is slightly lower quality. It's very similar to the other 2 wells that are in the Fort Union formation there that they already have. And so this is, the water quality is around 1,000 TDS basically. And so it'll be kind of minerally and salty, which is what they're currently dealing with. And so there's been complaints from some of the residents about the salty taste and the minerally taste, but that's been their system since it's been up. And so I guess the main purpose here is we've got a lot more water available for them, so that if they have any issues, they could shut down the other 2 wells. This one would be able to supply their entire system. So
From a quantity standpoint, we gained 100 gallons a minute.
Yep. Quality standpoint, it's very similar to the existing wells.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion that would be the same as the WWDC proposed motion on page 2 of the
I'll make the motion.
closeout? Commissioner Bettis has moved and Commissioner Little has seconded that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. We have another closeout memo.
Mr. Chairman, the next project is the South Platte River Basin, watershed study, and Jody Pavlika is our project manager.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As Harry just indicated, this is the closeout memo for the South Platte River Watershed Study. The sponsor was the Laramie County Conservation District. The initial appropriation during the 2016 legislative session was for $395,000. Contract was with Dahlgren Consulting, and the final contract amount was for $378,000. The original contract amount was $388,000. The final contract amount was $378,000 for a contract savings amount of $10,000. The Laramie County Conservation District requested this watershed study from the 2016 legislature to evaluate the condition of their watershed and to provide a hydrogeologically based recommendation for future groundwater resources management. The information they received provides baseline data that the district is using to implement management practices that address the natural resources issues in the drainage. During the course of the study, the consultant compiled data on the following topics: land ownership, land use and cultural resources, land cover and vegetation, including wetlands, climate, surface water hydrology, including data concerning stream gauges, estimates of surface water supply, and discussions of flood events, water quality, wildlife resources, geology and groundwater resources, estimates of water use, and a description of the watershed's transbasin diversion. In addition to the general topics listed above, the consultant provided special emphasis on the topics below, which are of additional relevance to the South Platte River Basin. An analysis of surface water hydrology and water supply in the Crow Creek and Lodgepole Creek subbasins, a review of irrigated land within the watershed, a determination of the source of supply for the watershed's irrigated lands. Utilizing the information described above, the consultant provided a water budget for the agricultural areas in the Albin, Pine Bluffs, and Carpenters areas. Table 3.51 from the report is provided on the next page. Included in this table is an estimated reduction in groundwater use to prevent further aquifer depletion. The study team feels that the approach developed in the study can be used as a template for other areas in the watershed and can be modified to estimate groundwater availability in other subwatersheds. Refinement of the data provided on the next page will be possible as additional data is gathered on actual pumping amounts. In addition to the groundwater analysis described above, the watershed study team met with 61 landowners and identified over 100 small water program projects that will provide public benefit to the watershed. Of the projects identified, 92 were in Laramie County and 15 were located in Albany County. There were 20 small reservoir projects, 40 stockwell projects, 20 spring developments, 14 environmental projects, and 11 irrigated projects. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Jody? I've got one. especially with the changes in what we made to the small waters projects tie to, these kinds of studies. You say that the district is using this baseline data to address the natural resource issues within the drainage. Can you expand a little bit on that? I mean, is this really still valuable information for them and information they will utilize, or maybe less so now that it's not as directly tied to the small water project?
Good question. So to answer that question, the district came in for, I think it was like 7 or 9 small water projects last year. Without having those specific projects in front of me, I can tell you there was a sort of wide variety of pipeline and stock watering projects, a few conversion projects for some of the existing wells and infrastructure that was in the area. So it is currently being utilized to kind of manage those projects and improve and rehabilitate some of the projects in the area that needed help. So in addition to that, they have reached out to the other people who participated in the study to see what applications they're interested in submitting in the 2019 January 1 deadlines that are approaching. So,
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, the other natural resource issue in Laramie County, which the report took a look at, is this mining of the groundwater system. And so I know this conservation district in the past has sought funding to actually buy and retire groundwater pumping rights. So I think they can use this study to pursue that further. The deficit remains with regards to groundwater mining in the county. So it's
And the district has discussed that with the WWDC?
Well, it was a point of the study to look at that particular issue. There's a long history of groundwater control area and wells going dry, irrigation wells going dry, and what is the cause of that. And so this is just more information to really fortify continued pursuit of buying and retiring those water rights if the district is interested in doing that.
I think watershed projects are important. I just wanted to follow up on some of the changes and whether that affects that. So any other questions? Well, there's no motion on this one, so thank you, Jody.
There is, Mr. Chairman.
There is?
Yes. After the table.
What is the motion we need? I don't have it written down here.
It's on the back page of the third or fourth
Other side of
page.
the table.
There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so do we have a motion to accept this study as outlined at the end of this memo?
I'll move that we adopt this motion.
And a second by Commissioner Bettis. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, aye. Motion carries. All right. Sorry, I didn't see your motion. All right, we're going to go through consultant selection approval now, and Barry is already up and working.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start by thanking everyone who participated in this process, and especially for the staff that did a lot of the work to get this to this point. A lot went into this. If you remember, this is the new process. We started with applications on March 1st, leading to recommendations which our staff wrote, got to the May meeting where we presented those recommendations, at which time you decide which projects you were going to go forward with for consultant selection. We did statements of interest, statements of qualification in June. We did RFPs, went out in July, and then proposals came back in, and then the ranking process August to September, culminating in yesterday's interviews. So in this process. I think it was a good process. You know, one of the big questions is, are we saving money? You know, and did we save money by not arbitrarily setting budgets up front? After going through this process and after talking to many of the project managers yesterday and this morning, it's kind of inconclusive. And the reason I say that is we got a small sample set here. We had 7 projects that we selected consultants for, one of which only had 1 firm coming in. So there were really only 6 where we had a spread to look at. Okay. And I will tell you that in talking to the project managers, some of them felt that, yeah, we probably did save a little bit of money. Okay. But there were some cases where, depending on the project, we might not have saved a little money. So it's a little inconclusive at this point, I think. One thing I will tell you, and this was kind of an eye opener, you know, we figured that the spread would be bigger. Okay. Well, I can tell you it definitely was. This year, of those 6 projects that we did, selection on looking at the low man to the high man, when we're just looking at costs, the average spread was $84,000, more than $84,000 from low to high on the proposals. The last year or earlier this year, because we did doubling up, right? 2 processes this year. If we go back to earlier this year in May, we had 18 projects. So we had 3 times the amount of projects that we selected for. The average spread there was $8,300 from low to high. So you're seeing a 10-fold increase in the proposal amount spreads. And that's kind of what we expected. So that's the only clear-cut thing that came out of this for sure. Like I said, it's a little inconclusive relative to, are we saving money or not? I mean, the one thing we know the dollar amounts, and they can be hardwired into the planning bill based on consultant selection. I know that was one of the goals as well. So I don't know if Harry, you want to add anything?
Oh, good summary.
Okay.
Any questions of Barry on the overall attempt here at a new way of doing it?
And with that, Mr. Chairman, we can entertain some motions, I think.
I do have one question, Barry. Do you have any information as to, I mean, there was this spread, which I saw in the project I looked at. It was pretty clear. But in addition, did the low bidders, whether or not they received the award, were they lower than whatever estimates the staff may have done internally? And I don't know what the staff did in that
Mr.
regard.
Chairman, there were a few cases where they were lower from what I talked to the project managers, but not wholesale lower. I mean, a little bit lower and in some cases. There were also some cases the other way. So here again, it's inconclusive. I think they might have saved a few $1,000s on some of these, but some of the others, not so much.
So how do we want to go project by project and get
I think
motions
we
from
have
the
to.
commissioners?
We have to.
All right, well then the first project is the Evanston Water Master Plan. Do we have a motion on the consultant selection?
I got it.
Mr. Bennett?
The selection committee for the Evanston Water Master Plan Project 1 ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Number 1, William H. Smith and Associates. Number 2, Forsgren and Associates. Number 3, Sunrise Engineering. I, Nick Bettis, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with William H. Smith and Associates for consulting services on the Evanston Water Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended budget of $126,000. And I guess in regard to what Barry said about the cost, we had a pretty level spread between the top 3 firms that we had here. And in talking to some of the staff, they seemed to think that this bid was could have been a little bit lower than what they thought they may have estimated, but that's what it is.
Okay, can we get a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Geis. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now we've got the Torrington Water Master Plan. Commissioner Wagner.
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the Torrington Water Master Plan Level 1 study project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order: AVI PC, Sunrise Engineering, Inc., Baker and Associates, Inc. I, Rod Wagner, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with AVIPC for consulting services on the Torrington Water Master Plan Level 1 study project with a recommended budget of $174,000. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the contract negotiations. Accept the scope alternative for $12,740 for an aerial drone survey included in the above recommendation of a budget of $174,000.
Second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Geis. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Commissioner Wagner, do you have a motion on LaPrel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The selection committee for the Salt Creek Edgerton Midwest Water Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order: Morrison Merrily, CEPI, Western Heritage. I, Rod Wagner, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Morrison Merrily for the consulting services on the Salt Creek Edgerton Midwest Water Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended budget of $160,000. Further, selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the contract negotiations. 1, to accept the scope alternatives A of a surge analysis in the amount of $15,000 and a scope alternative B, simulated distribution system testing with disinfection boosting in the amount of $15,000. These amounts are reflected in the recommended project budget of $160,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Bettis with second. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Commissioner Geis, do you have a motion on the Bluff Upper Bluff project?
The select committee of the Bluff Upper Bluff Irrigation District Master Plan Level 1 project ranked the consulting firms. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Consulting ranked interviewed in the following order: Western Heritage Consulting Engineers, Y2 Consultants, number 3 with Wyoming Water Right Consultants. I, Gerald Geis, the district be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Western Heritage Consulting Engineers for consulting services on the Upper Bluff Irrigation District Master Plan Level 1 project with recommendations of $223,000.
Is there a second?
I second.
Excuse me.
123.
123,000.
Yeah.
What does I get cheaper one?
You said 200.
223. I need to know who seconded
I
that.
did.
Okay, Commissioner Sucre seconded it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, now we've got the Boulder Irrigation District Rehab. Commissioner Bettis.
Yes, thank you. The selection committee for the Boulder Irrigation District Rehabilitation Level 2 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order: 1, Sunrise Engineering; 2, Wink Associates, Inc.; 3, William H. Smith and Associates, Inc. I, Commissioner Nick Bettis, move the director to be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Sunrise Engineering for consulting services on the Boulder Irrigation District Rehabilitation Level 2 project with a recommended budget of $171,000. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the contract negotiations: to accept the proposed siphon analysis scope alteration for $6,875, which is included in the recommended budget of $171,000. Before we get to this, here again to reflect some of the things that Barry had, we had.
Let me get a second
Okay.
first. Do we have
I'll
a second?
it and then he can talk.
Second by Commissioner.
Thanks, Jerry.
I've been trying to get Kellen to speak up his second instead of waving my finger.
We had firms that were close, but we had kind of an outlier here, which I think might have made up some of Barry's huge discrepancy between high and low. And I really don't know what went on there other than the fact that they may have misinterpreted the proposal and or maybe even we're going to do a more in-depth analysis as far as the rehabilitation analysis than the other consultants. And this firm was also, relatively new, which could have played a factor there. But everything else was pretty much in line other than that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That takes us to the Lake DeSmet utilization project. Commissioner Suker.
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the Lake DeSmet Healy Reservoir Utilization Level 2 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Number 1, NTEC. Number 2, Dowell. Number 3, WWDC. I, Larry Suker, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with NTEC for consultant services on the Lake DeSmet Healy Reservoir Utilization Level 2 project with a recommended budget of $268,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Little. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That leads us back to Commissioner Wagner.
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the Laparelle Irrigation District Rehabilitation Level 2 project ranking the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Respect, they were the only one that put in for this. I, Rod Wagner, move that the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with respect for the consulting services of the Laparelle Irrigation District Rehabilitation Level 2 project with a recommended budget of $290,000. Further, selection committee offers the following suggestion to the director during contract negotiations: to accept a scope alternative to decrease the scope of work on the finite element analysis of the dam.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Little. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wagner.
we went well into the evening on this. It was pretty interesting. Thank you for your leadership, Chase. They had a $595,000 initial response to what our scope was, but this was a lesser amount, the $290,000. And we're going to get a lot out of this, but that's a dangerous position that we're in up there with the Laparelle Irrigation District. And I think in the future, it's going to bear further consideration as to looking into how we can assist them with their situation, because boy, it looks like it could be pretty bad for the town of Douglas or the interstate if that ever goes down. So just a warning.
Additional comments? Discussion? Did we get a second on that, Katie?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure. All right. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Barry. And thanks for all your work on
Do you want
this
these,
new process.
Mr. Chairman? Do you want these?
I think that's fine. Now we have a request to use WDA2 sponsor contingency funds on the lighter ditch.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest and recuse myself on this.
We don't have to, do we?
I'll allow that recusal. Harry?
So, Mr. Chairman, under tab Q in your notebook, you'll find a memo from Ken Mitchell, our project manager. This is a project currently funded by Water Development to the tune of $1,310,000. That's a 67% grant and a 33% loan. And the project has been designed and bids have been let. During the design of the project, it was noted that there are corrosive soils along the pipeline alternative. This is a project that's going to pipe an existing ditch and also work on some control structures for the district. So 2 pipe alternatives were bid, one being corrugated metal pipe with as I understand it, an aluminized coating, and then reinforced concrete pipe. The reinforced concrete pipe was a higher price, but the district believes, and I concur with the district, that it offers a better alternative with regards to corrosive soils, and it's also a more stable pipe in terms of its installation. So they are seeking an additional $261,000 of budget from the Water Development Commission. That would be in the form of 2/3 grant, 1/3 loan. So the total project budget, if you concur with this, with the recommendation, would become $1,571,000, of which $1,052,570 would be grant and $518,430 would be loan. So what I will tell you is within I guess for newer members, we do have a sponsors contingency fund, both for Water Development Account 1 projects and Water Development Account 2. This is Account 2. The available funds in that account are $613,495. So we have adequate funds to fund this change, and I would recommend that change. We have a little bit of a procedural issue in that by statute, Select Water Committee is to take action or has in the past approved any additional contract amendments in excess of $5,000. That $5,000 comes out of statutes. They are not at this meeting. The statute allows for submitting these contract amendments or contracts to the LSO, which then in turn provides those to the Select Water Committee, and they're afforded 30 days to review and recommend on that. So if you decide to take an affirmative action today on this request, my recommendation would be that the motion be to authorize the chairman to enter into this contract amendment once the 30-day review and recommend period is completed by the Select Water Committee.
Questions of Harry? Commissioner Bettis.
Harry, kind of refresh not only my memory, but the commission's. Did we do a level 1 or level 2 study, and how did we miss this geotechnical deal on the soils, or did we miss it?
Mr. Chairman, we did not. We did do a level 1 study. I'm thinking we had a level 1 study on this. We would not normally do an extensive geotechnical report. This was something that was picked up in the design. But I think rather, I don't attribute this cost increase so much to corrosive soils as I do to the current bidding climate. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at the November meeting. But we have a fairly strong climate. I think you're going to start to see bidding costs go up. And when we established this budget really 2-3 years ago, those costs are now starting to creep into the bids that we're going to be receiving. So I would anticipate you're going to see more of these requests in the next few years just by virtue of the bidding climate that's out there.
Any other questions? Commissioner Suker?
Mr. Chairman, Gary, I have a question about the size of this pipe.
So, Mr. Chairman, the diameter of this pipe
Yeah,
is
the diameter.
78 inch in diameter.
Because there was no other material available besides CMP and the concrete that would facilitate the 72 inch.
We'll look to Brian. Polyethylene.
Yeah, you can, there's probably a low pressure PVC pipe that would also be available in that diameter also.
We would anticipate that polyethylene, for example, would be at a higher cost than the concrete pipe. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay.
Go ahead.
I think we have a issue with Mr. Bettis has left temporarily. We have a quorum here, but can we go ahead and vote with if there's an absent?
Mr. Chairman, you can.
Okay.
I would move the motion, what Harry said.
And that would include the chairman to sign the contract after the 30-day review.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wagner. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries, and
Get him back up here so he can vote.
our attorney's happy. That's all I can. All right. The next item is the construction progress reports, including Kimmer, and Sundance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under tab R, your notebook, we have 3 project reports to report on. The first is the Kimmer Transmission Pipeline 2016 project. Under the project description, this is a transmission pipeline of 3,800 feet of 18-inch pipe. This project is advanced to the construction phase. So we have a bid opening on August 1st of this year. We had 3 bids submitted. The range of bids was between $1.1 and $2.1 million. The low bidder was High Country Construction. Their bid amount was $1,138,887, and the engineer's estimate was $1,050,291.
Are there any questions of Brian? Okay, if we move on then.
The next project in the notebook is the Sundance Transmission Pipeline 2016 project. This project is closed out. There was a WWDC appropriation of $713,550 and a total budget of $1,065,000. And the project closed out at the bottom there. The final project cost was $965,828.20 with WWDC funding share of $647,104.89. So there was a reversion back to account 1 of $66,445.11.
So is that a closeout report instead of a
Yes.
construction progress report?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the Sundance transmission pipeline? All right.
Next project, last project in your notebook is another Sundance project. It's the Sundance PRV Improvements 2016 project, and this project was to replace 4 pressure reducing valves. The funding appropriation from the agency was $137,350 in grants, and the total project budget was $205,000. And again, this is a project closeout with a total project cost $126,766.70. WWDC funding share was $84,926.14. There's a total reversion back into account 1 of $52,423.86.
Questions on the Sundance pressure reduction? Okay, Harry, do we need a motion on accepting these, the closeout? Okay, all right.
For your information.
Thanks, Brian. That takes us to the Gillette Madison update. And I just wanted to say, as we give that update and ask questions, I think if we're going to get into questions about the contract, interpretation, obligations between Gillette and the Wyoming Water Development Commission, et cetera, which I think could come up, we should probably go to executive session for those. But any update outside of, those types of issues, I think is fine. So, Harry?
Mr. Chairman, there's been a fair amount of happenings on this project since we last met back in August. I'll start with water service agreements, and you heard from a number of individuals in and around the Carlisle area that they did want to connect to the Gillette system. And the question is, of course, domestic water versus stock water for the use. Gillette has generated water service agreements and distributed those to a number of parties up there. Because water development is not party to those agreements, I'm only aware of those by virtue of conversations. I do not have a copy or copies of those. With regards to domestic water, potable water, Gillette is offering permanent taps to their system so that we have good quality drinking water available to those folks. However, with regards to stock use, and this is generally larger volume stock use, Gillette has remained in their position with regards to a temporary connection. The water service agreements have a 3-year life with regards to stock use, with the ability to extend. And as you are aware in the introductions, we do have representatives from Gillette, so you may have questions for them. So those have been distributed. I know there's 1 or 2 parties that are very serious about entering into those or signing those and going ahead and getting connected in. Others, I do not know the status of those. Second topic is with regards to discharge permits for construction water on the project. And at our August tour, you heard that we have the connection pipelines from each of the 5 wells that come down to a header and then connect into a 30-inch pipeline. And that piping needs to be flushed out. And the typical construction sequence is that water is discharged to the surface and then flows down natural drainage ways wherever it might be discharged. That does require a discharge permit from DEQ. And so the city of Gillette has filed for a permit to do so. That the water would be directed through the Canode subdivision. And that was the topic of a public meeting in Moorcroft, I believe it was Moorcroft, on September 17th. Water Development did not attend that meeting, and I believe I distributed a newspaper article to you about that meeting that kind of, I think, talks about what the concerns were, but primarily residents of the area were concerned about water quality in their wells that might be impacted by this discharge water. Subsequently, the public notice on discharge permit and a second discharge permit that was filed by the contractor working for the city of Gillette are now out for public comment period, and that public comment period will close November 2nd. It will be sometime after November 2nd that DEQ will make its decision on whether to issue those discharge permits or issue those with conditions or just issue those outright. Don't know what action they may take. They're taking public comment. That second discharge permit is an alternative to the first one, which would move water not on the surface, but move water down the piping system closer to Keyhole Reservoir before it would be discharged into a tributary that would then flows directly into Keyhole Reservoir. And so it avoids those surface discharge concerns that the residents are bringing up. However, that is beyond the scope of the contract with regards to the construction contractor. And you can anticipate that there will be a very large change order associated with that. Rough numbers, $250,000 increased project cost if that alternative is selected. So at this point in time, in order to move forward with completing the pipelines, the lines are in the ground, but completing the flushing of those lines and making them suitable for domestic water service, we need to have that water discharged out of those pipes. So that is, I think, in a critical path schedule that now is becoming the critical path. And so a discharge permit is required either way. And so that's now in DEQ's court. The third area that I will bring you up to date is the testing of the seal of the casing between the steel pipe casing and the outside of the borehole through the formations. And recall that M12, it's been reported that casing seal by the special consultant that's been brought on board by Gillette has judged that M12 seal is adequate. DEQ has not issued a final ruling or acceptance of that, but that's at least the report from the special consultant. M11 has also been tested. That has not as good a seal as M12, and I've only heard a preliminary report on that. It indicates that there is a question with regards to the seal, but again, that's a preliminary report finding, and I have not seen a final report on that particular well. Once 11 was tested, the Schlumberger moved their operation up and tested wells 13, 14, and 15, and the preliminary results that we're hearing back is that the seals on those 3 wells are in good shape. So I think to me, for the most part, although it's not final information, it appears that the seals that were placed by the well drilling contractor in 4 of the 5 are in good shape, and then the 5th one, I'll just put a question mark by it at this point in time. So again, I go back to the discharge permits. We have 1 well, I think, that's ready to have pumps set and become operational. We still need the piping systems to be completed and fleshed out before we can start moving or pumping potable water from these wells into the Gillette system. Let me stop there. Item with regards to Gillette that I want to visit with you about, but with regards to the Gillette Madison construction project, I would stand for questions, and as I noted, we have representatives from the city of Gillette here as well.
Commissioner Lancaster.
Chairman Evans, Harry, this additional $225,000 for the contractor may or may not charge or will charge for the pipeline or route that's going to go to Keyhole. Is that a one-time cost, or is that something that's permanently in place that can for other clean-out opportunities?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lancaster, that's a one-time charge. It would utilize part of the Gillette Madison pipeline project, but it's going to require some additional valving and such. But once this project is completed, those connections valves would be dismantled, and it's my understanding. So it's not a permanent scenario. So when we talk about this discharge piping, this would get wells M11 and 12 available for production. We still have, with regards to wells 13, 14, and 15, 14 has yet to be acid frac stimulated, so that work needs to go forward. And then those 3 wells, 13, 14, and 15, have not been pump tested. So that's additional water that is not covered by these discharge permits. And that's a higher volume of water, so that remains a question mark of how that discharge water is going to be handled and will require, my understanding, a separate discharge permit from DEQ.
Follow up.
Commissioner Lang.
So can we spend a little more money and put in a permanent discharge that will carry us into the future?
Mr. Chairman, talking to the city of Gillette prior to the meeting this morning, they've indicated that they're looking at evaluating using the connection or the discharge option for the M11 and M12 wells, also for M13, 14, 15. So that cost would be not just for the 11 and 12 wells, but again, be able to be utilized for the M13, 14, 15, and alleviate that discharge over the surface that there's concerns with. So I think we're able to use that change order for both permits that they're looking at.
So one more question. And there was a contract entered into or with one of the landowners that we were able to discharge water onto his property. Am I not remembering right? We're going to bypass that and go to Keyhole.
That's Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I think that the alternative with using the existing pipeline, the transmission pipeline that's already been constructed, that's what the city of Gillette's looking at for both the discharge options, to get that water, to move it further toward Keyhole Reservoir and avoid going overland across some of these individual property owners.
I was just concerned that we'd have to pay that guy again to just put discharge on his land.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let me make sure everybody understands this. We're looking at two discharge options that are before DEQ. We won't know until DEQ makes a decision, do we have the ability to discharge on the surface and across these landowners? That's the lowest cost solution, we believe, unless there's significant conditions put on that by DEQ. If DEQ were to say, we need to sample and test all of the wells within some radius, that runs a cost up on that particular option. So ultimately, when DEQ makes their decisions, then Gillette will make a decision on which of these options is most favorable, and cost will be obviously a driving consideration.
Thank you.
Commissioner Suker.
Harry, generally speaking, is not the discharge permit part of the permit to construct from the DEQ? Are we changing the discharge points? Because isn't the part of the well, when you get your permit to construct through the DEQ, you have to have discharge permits at that time, correct?
Chairman, anytime you discharge water onto the surface, you're required to have a discharge permit. And those permits are generally the requirement of the contractor. But virtually, in terms of putting a bid together, that contractor would have relied upon what's the cost with these discharge permits. And because of the controversy that's been caused, and because we have landowners that are now protesting this, DEQ may place conditions on that permit, which would be considered an additional cost to the contractor. We're talking about drinking water being discharged onto the surface, the ground surface, and there's generally not a pollution issue associated with that. There could be some erosion concerns that the contractor would have to resolve. But if that discharge permit comes out and says you need to sample every well within 3-mile radius of your discharge and pull water quality samples, that's over and above what would be anticipated from a contractor's perspective. And so that will be an additional cost.
Right, but back to the point, before DEQ would give you a permit to construct, would you not have to have at least a point or a discharge area for that water? That's what I recollect. And in fact, dealing with them, that's my anticipation. You wouldn't get a permit without a point of discharge. But maybe So what comes first, I guess, the chicken or the egg?
Well, Mr. Chairman, with regards to the discharge permits, the application defines where the water will be discharged and what drainage it will flow down. That is defined in the permit application. And with the first option that I described, that surface water will be discharged on the state section and will flow then off of the state section through the Canode subdivision. And so that's the plan. But DEQ, in normal practice, DEQ issues these discharge permits all the time for construction projects.
Oh.
But this controversy has caused DEQ to step back and say, we may need to condition this. We're now taking public comments on this because of the controversy. That's outside of the normal realm of discharge permits as well. So it's all wrapped up together, and there is potentially additional cost associated with it. We just don't know how DEQ is going to rule.
Okay, so they changed that through the process. They changed the point of discharge. Yeah, basically.
Well, the point of discharge for these wells is probably what has always been anticipated.
Right.
Okay. But if that permit is not available, and it was initially rejected, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So the contractor did apply for this discharge permit, and it was rejected by DEQ. So Gillette has come back and now reapplied that. We're a year into this process with the groundwater issues, so we know much more now. We have the casing seal testing that's been completed. So I think DEQ is now in a better position to make a determination on this, the option one, I'll call it, for the discharge permit. But if those conditions, or if they reject that, then we're in a fallback position of going to a different discharge permit, which is the keyhole reservoir option.
So in other words, Gillette did have a discharge permit originally. Okay, they did not. All right, thank you.
Any other questions of Harry? Commissioner Bettis?
From a timeline standpoint, where are we on this then, with all this rigmarole going on?
Are you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bitters, are you talking about the construction schedule?
I'm talking about to get to the end.
Well, I would say from, again, conversations with Gillette, this project we thought would be completed more than a year ago. This project has really been largely placed on hold by these groundwater issues. And I would say that we still have a lot of work to do in terms of fracturing, acid fracking M14, pump testing those wells, then bringing in the pumps and installing those on each of those wellheads. So we're going to be well into 2019 from a completion standpoint.
Is DEQ giving you a timeline? I guess the Water Quality Division is the one that are issuing these, huh?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bettis, yes, DEQ Water Quality. And I would expect that the permit decisions will be made shortly after the public comment period closes. So we're into the month of November before we'll have a decision from DEQ.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wagner?
Harry, what kind of volume of water are we talking?
Mr. Chairman, I believe for the M11, M12, I think there's about 1 million gallons that we're looking at. For the discharge for M13, 14, 15, I think there's still a question of the pumping rate for those wells. A DEQ typically requires 150%. Our design yield for those wells is 1,400 gallons a minute. So I know there's been discussions between the city of Gillette and DEQ whether they're going to do just the 1,400 gallon per minute pump test or a 2,100 gallon per minute pump test. I think that's still an outstanding question. And then the duration is going to 3 or 4 days. So it's in the millions of gallons when you total up all 3 wells. My recollection exceeds 10 million gallons.
That would be a good slug of water going through Canode then, if it got that far or whatever.
But we go through the Canode subdivision, so not Canode, the rancher, the individual landowner up there.
I've got some questions, but do any other commissioners have questions?
No, we'll let you.
Well, thank you. When we were up in Gillette, the DEQ was at least had a draft on this work they were doing on whether there was interference. Did that get completed?
Mr. Chairman, I've not received any final work products from DEQ.
Is there any anticipated legislation that we've heard of, as there was last session, that might be aimed at this issue? Do we know?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of any draft legislation that's out there.
Has there been any discussions of litigation between landowners, City of Gillette, et cetera, that we're aware of?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing that I have heard is just hearsay with regards to there is a legal route that landowners could take. And I will tell you that those discharge permits, I believe, can be appealed. So permit is issued and a landowner feels that they are aggrieved, they have an appeal process available to them.
I have some question about obligations under the contract that WWDC has with Gillette about change orders and requirements regarding change orders and costs associated with it that I would really have of Dan. And I'm wondering if we could have an executive session on those questions.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to go to executive session.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Lancaster. And that's a motion to discuss what I just said.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Discuss
All right.
legal issues.
All right. Any discussion on that motion?
Question.
continue?
So, Mr.
And I
Chairman,
want to ask Gillette at the end if they have any comments as well. So thanks for staying. Go ahead.
so, Mr. Chairman, at the August meeting, when we were talking about the Gillette Madison project, and we took a break afterwards, we did have a Crook County commissioner there, and I spoke to her about, I guess the way I phrased it is, we have a number of individuals in Crook County, in and around the Gillette well field, that have drinking water issues. I mean, poor quality water. And would Crook County be interested in sponsoring an application? And I was thinking level 3 application for a pipeline to extend a water line down the road. We actually drove down that road to the church, if you recall, and turned around in that parking lot, extend it down that road so that those individuals would have access to drinking water. It would be water supplied by the Gillette Madison system. But Gillette, at least it's shown in their statements, that they were not interested in building a large community water system in Crook County. I mean, their focus is Campbell County and Gillette. So she took that back to the commission in Crook County, and then I was asked to participate via phone with a commission meeting in which I laid out my proposal, and I asked Brian to put together a cost estimate for an 8-inch pipeline extension about a mile in length. It's $1 million project, pretty expensive. And so I laid that out to the Crook County commissioners, and this was, I don't have the exact date in my memory, but they could have brought a level 3 application through this cycle that we're in now. And they decided that they did not want to do that. They asked questions, what's the funding percentage? And I said 67% grant, but then there's an expectation that the sponsor comes up with 33%. So they balked at that. But what they did decide to do is to bring an application for a level 1 study for a community water system in and around the Carlisle area to, again, address these water quality issues that are now have been determined or exposed. So they asked me when the application deadline for planning studies was. I said March 1. And Senator Driscoll was certainly participating in that meeting and said, we need to do it sooner than that. So we have at the office level an application from Crook County to sponsor a level 1 planning studies for water supply in and around the Carlisle area. And it will be bigger, I think, than potentially just those handful of landowners that you heard from on your tour. So I'm going to present that to you at your November meeting for consideration. It's didn't make the last March 1 deadline for application for planning studies. It's not been through your new process in terms of selecting a consultant. But based on the concerns and the urgency, I think this is a way that the commission can look to facilitate maybe a solution there. The Crook County commissioners are more interested of seeing, how many individuals are interested, what that would take. What is the source of supply? Are we looking at connecting to the Gillette system? That's certainly an option. Drilling a new well potentially. All of those things that a level 1 study does. So you're going to see that as a application before you at your November meeting, and you can, obviously you can determine to move it forward with a budget number, or if you say, well, we're going to take that application, but we're not going to act on it until after the March 1 application deadline. Those are options that are available to you. But in terms of trying to bring some resolution from the landowner's perspective, I think it'll be interesting information for them. And whether there's enough interest to form a community or a water district up there, I don't know, but that's one of the things that a level one study takes on. So, but we do have an application from Crook County.
Anticipate talking about that in the November meeting?
We will bring that. I'm going to bring that application to you as a request for funding, and the commission then can take its action.
Anything else that you need to report on as to the status of the Gillette project?
Chairman, no.
I'd like to ask the city of Gillette if they have anything to add. We'd be glad to hear from you.
Mr. Chair, Commission, my name is Patrick Davidson. I'm the City Administrator for the City of Gillette. I'm joined with Director Mike Cole, who's the Utilities Director for the City of Gillette. No specific comments today. We wanted to make sure, however, we made ourselves available for you should you have any questions or concerns, or if there was any other information we could provide.
Thank you. Wrap up the Gillette discussion. I think it does. And is there anything for the good of the order?
I have one item that I just would like to ask Harry about. The tank, do you have any information? Has the city of Sundance come down, the town of Sundance come down, done any request or any communication with you as far as the purchase or the taking our tank for nothing? Did they make any kind of an emergency application?
Mr. Chairman, they have not made an application to that regards. Kathy Lentz was in town this week, and I did speak with her 2 days ago. And I would say that Sundance is interested in the existing tank that Pine Haven has. And I talked to her a little bit about it. My suggestion to her was that once that tank is taken out of service, and is it still in service today?
It is, but here's where we're at with that. We're really on a critical area. If we have about 4 or 5 days of painting weather, because that's all we have left in ours, the painting and the chlorination, and then we will fill and test. And the contractor, as soon as we have that online, he's taking that tank down. So, I don't really have a date for him, and I've been communicating with him. But at that point, can we leave that tank? We did vote to allow them to have it free of charge if they will disassemble and take it out of there. But the problem is, it's in our contract. There's a $23,000, I believe, item to dismantle and take that tank out of there. And if they don't take it, we don't want to be stuck with it either. That's where I'm at. So I don't know if I know that you got emergency funding for a study for the Gillette Madison. Is there something that we can do in that respect, or that they can do, or that would entice that, yes, they will take it, yes, they will move it, and we don't have to worry about it? Because I'm getting pressure from both sides now, and I don't know where we're at. So,
Mr. Chairman, what I had suggested to Kathy Lentz was that their engineer be allowed to inspect the inside of that tank. That means that it's out of service. I don't know that the timing's going to work. I would certainly be supportive of if Gillette wanted to move forward with that. Sundance, excuse me. If Sundance wanted to move forward, but they also need to look at the site that they're proposing, and there's is that a tank that's going to fit on that particular site? So I think they need to do some preliminary work, but at that point, she and I talked about, would it make sense to move an application for planning purposes before March 1? And I said, if Sundance was wanting to move that tank, I think we can move right to level 3, but we don't have anything in the works. We'd have to develop a cost estimate and budget for that going forward. So timing wise, where we're at today, it's going to be difficult.
Harry, there was an inspection done. We had divers in that tank. I believe, five years ago. And the report was excellent condition. And that's 5 years, and I don't think it changed dramatically from that point.
Mr. Chairman, if you could provide that to the city of Sundance or to me, then I would certainly forward it on to Sundance.
We'll do that
Okay.
because I really am enticed that that tank is in too good a condition for it to go to Pacific Steel. Absolutely. It's way better. And if it can be worked out, I would. But on the other side, I'm not sure that I can leave that tank there on speculation purposes that they will take that. I don't know. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lancaster.
I would propose that it's 3 months out, but when the new year begins with new commissioners, I would like to have a little bit of a training. The learning curve is pretty steep. And Harry was good to me, took me aside and got me running because of issues that were really pertinent right then. How to conduct a meeting, how to make a motion, how to go through that, just little stuff. And Daniel to help us know what to say and what we can't say, and Katie about accommodations. Just not a very long meeting. I mean, we probably have to take an hour, but and Barry and you guys from the staff saying it just it can take some of the anxiety off. Top of the
I would say maybe we could delay a workshop opening or something, to have new members have a hour or two of hour and a half training on some of this stuff. Maybe that would then they're in town. And they don't have to.
What about us old guys? We need.
And anybody who wants a refresher can go too. But that way, it's not by phone. They don't have to make a special trip. But it could be they're already here. So
I would like to have it at Larry Suker's house and have.
You can't
All right.
come down.
Is there anything else here? We got a future meeting scheduled November 7th through 9th at the Wyoming Contractors Association building in Casper. I think that's all we have to discuss. Harry, you got one more?
Mr.
Just
Chairman.
on the south side of I-25 on Popular Street.
Say it on there.
Just you go past the
Doesn't say
Exxon
November.
gas station, and it'll be on your left. It's where the Wyoming contractors building is at.
Here's something.
Okay. Harry?
This is next.
Mr. Chairman, also, we're
Yeah.
giving to you for the first time for your review, the 2019 meeting schedule. And that's the last page in your notebook. And I just make note that we have eliminated the June meeting. I think based on the new planning project schedule, we can accomplish all of the work for planning in the March meeting and then also the May meeting. So it didn't seem like there was a need for the June meeting, but that's going to be substituted with this October meeting now. So just make note of that. That's probably the biggest revision on that schedule.
We have about 21 days of meetings. Maybe 24, I don't know. Right in there, though.
But at any rate, we didn't see a need for the June meeting, so we'll try to get it all done March and May going forward.
Katie?
Chairman, at this point, you do have reservations at the Hampton in Casper for the November 7, 8, and 9 meeting. And I did hear those gentlemen visiting about the December meeting, which isn't on this because this is the 19, and I omitted that. So there is a December meeting.
Here.
Maybe
12, 13, and then select water meets the 14th.
15th. Okay.
We'll probably follow it up with an email, Katie, right? That tells everybody where they have to be and when.
Yes.
Anything else, Harry?
But you gotta know how to read the email.
You probably know. I'd like to announce that Commissioner Geist did give me 2.5 hours to complete this meeting, and we're ahead of that. So, meeting adjourned.
You're gonna be on chairman.